Greetings. I am Dr. Noni Davis. I'm coming to you from St. C Academy. I am a legacy owner of this school. We've been here for 30 years, and it was started by my late father, William Edward Davis Sr., and my mother, Sylvia Davis, who is still with us, in 1996, creating a very special space for African American children and African diaspora children. We've always had the diaspora represented here. And so um, I wanted today to go over what is Pan Africanism. Um, and because my institution is a Pan African space, I am a Pan Africanist. And what is that exactly? What does it mean to be Pan African? So, Pan Africanism, according to the Dominican University Rebecca Crown Library, is a reference to the multiple political movements of Africans and their descendants in the Americas and Europe, or wherever we are, um, to unite against white supremacy and colonialism. Um, the term Pan Africanism didn't emerge until the 1900s, but the roots of this movement preceded the Pan African Congress of 1900, which is where you had you had African leaders from the Caribbean, from Africa, from the Americas, and Europe meet to discuss the issues facing Black people around the world. And like I said, I consider myself a Pan Africanist. I understand that among the Black communities, particularly in America, this is a very contentious issue. But a reason is because I know but the reason I am a Pan Africanist is because I know the history of the Ma'afa, the Great Disaster beginning in the late 1400s with the Portuguese, and buying and enslaving Africans and taking them first to Portugal, and then they started moving across to different places in Africa, Cape Verde. I'm trying to think I think they went to Equatorial Guinea and just different islands, and then they moved all the way to Brazil. With the Spanish claimed Mexico, all of this stuff. So that was the beginning. And so it's led from this was they say that the trade really started like in the 1500s and lasted all the way through the 1800s. So it's about 300 years for real. And they said 12 to 20 million Africans were brought across the Atlantic. But what they don't tell you is that there was also trafficking to Arab countries, trafficking across the Red Sea, trafficking across the Sahel, the desert. So we had it was like Africa was under attack. I also know that Africans were trading with indigenous people in the Americas centuries before Europe. We know we have the Olmec civilizations, which is very similar to Nubians and Kush. Spiritual systems are very close to each other down in Mexico. We also know about Bubakari II, who traveled in 1300s from the Gambia to with 200 ships to the Americas, and they believe that he landed in Brazil and throughout the islands, with 200 ships with him. And there was evidence when Christopher Columbus came here that there was there was commentary about trade from the indigenous people, the native of Turtle Island. They said, hey, yeah, some other people were here too before you, and they were Black, and they brought us gold, and they called it guineas. Um, some of us arrived on purpose, therefore, and many of us were brought here by force. Our ancestral DNA link support these historical narratives. So we also, there's most of these other organizations who are anti-Pan Africanism. I'm trying to think what you know what it is. It's African Americans who were here believe that we've been here all along. Well, like I said, yes, we have been here for a long time, um, prior to Europeans. That is, we know that that's true. We also uh, have to understand that people who live in a certain range of around the no, around the equator are going to be dark people. Um, the darker, the closer you are to the equator, and or within that range of the equator, the more melanated you're going to be. And so there were black people here in the States. Um, what is interesting is that a lot of folks are ignorant of the history of Pan Africanism. It did not begin in the 1900s or in the 1800s. We have to remember that when you listen to these slave narratives, a lot of Africans knew where their people came from. The ones who were brought here between in the 1800s, 17 and 1800s, they knew that their parents were from Ghana. They knew their people were from um, Senegal, the Gambia. They knew the tribe. A lot of them knew who they were. They also spoke the language. A lot of the practices that we have regarding spiritual systems can be directly linked to our relationship or our connection to Africa. If I traveled to Cuba and became something else, it traveled to Brazil, it became something else. There's a mixture of African indigenous practices, spiritual practices that were blended to create new systems like voodoo, hoodoo, all of these things that Santeria and uh, candomblé. So we can touch these things, the way we prepare our food, the way we uh, what is it, our literary, our linguistic patterns, all of these things are indicative, and as well as the DNA that we have. So, rice cultivation was based on West African knowledge. Blacksmiths in Louisiana, when they did their work, and then all over really, when you see these, what Sankofa shaped, heart shaped symbols in this iron, a lot of these were African symbols that they used that they used or created in the woodwork as well. So we have a plethora of things that prove that we are African descendant, and so that should not be ignored. And so today I wanted to share what I have learned about early Pan African uh, liberation folks who preceded people like Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Malcolm X, and Kwame Nkrumah, to provide evidence that while our ancestors root us to America, or what we would call Turtle Island, we are also people with ancient roots to Africa and the Caribbean. And so, with that, I'm going to start. I'm reading this book. I don't think I brought it in here, did I? I left it. So, I'm reading this book called The Second Emancipation, and it was written by Howard French. I read his other book, Born in Blackness. But what has intrigued me so much about this book is that he's introducing the people who had a lot of influence on Kwame Nkrumah. We know Kwame Nkrumah was the first president of what we now call Ghana. Before he became president, it was called the Gold Coast. And I'm going to make sure I brighten this up and make sure my volume is up too. Okay. And so it was called the Gold Coast. And so before he was able to transition from a colonial government into a independent government ruled by Africans, he had to go through a transition space. But before we go to that, who were the people who congregated around him, who inspired him, who laid the foundation? And so, let me tell you, so a little bit about Kwame Nkrumah. He was born in on September 21st, 1909. He was attended Catholic school in this place called Half Sini. Um, and he attended Catholic school all the way through his education. He began his career as a teacher, and at the age of 24, he was accepted to Lincoln University, which I've introduced, which is one of the first HBCUs to offer a degree. No, I think it was the first HBCU to offer a degree. It was founded in 1854 as the Ashman Institute, and this university is in Pennsylvania. Lincoln University is not only known for the institution, but that produced the first prime minister of Ghana, who is Kwame Nkrumah, but is also responsible for educating the first prime minister of Nigeria, Dr. Nandi Azikiwe of Nigeria. So two of the first two prime ministers of Africa following colonialism graduated from Lincoln University. Um, so the Second Emancipation chronicles the life of Kwame Nkrumah, cultivated by Pan Africanism. Um, I believe that Europe's mistake, and I've said this before, was after they did that Berlin conference in the late 1800s, was 1914. They, after they had signed all of this, and hey, let's just divide Africa up and we're gonna get along. Well, by 1914 they were back at war, so it didn't even last. Was it 12 years maybe? 12 years later they were already back in World War I. And so what their mistake was is that they said, well, we're going to get our colonies to come here and help us fight. And by doing that, in my opinion, these people, if you were French colony, you were speaking French. If you're an English British colony, you were speaking English. If you were, German, you were speaking German. If you were a colony ruled by whatever colony you were, whatever country that was ruling it, you were speaking that language. You were forced to. So now you have Indians speaking British, you have Chinese speaking British, you have people from Kenya speaking English, you have people from Gambia speaking English, and so wait, they all are experiencing in Nigeria, and they're all experiencing the same treatment from England. Same thing with France. You have what is it? Vietnam, and then you have Senegal, and you have what is it? Indonesia. I think it's French Indonesia. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But those people are now coming to fight, and they are learning from each other the way they were being treated. So I believe that was the beginning of the end of colonialism, and it also helped to inspire more Pan-Africanism for the African ones. Anyway, so Howard French introduced several Pan-Africanists that I was familiar with. So the first one was J.E. Castley Hayford. And let's see. So let me see. Oh, goodness, right here. Let me go back. And this is him, J.E. Castley Hayford. And he was born in the Gold Coast in 1866. I was a Fonte man who trained as a lawyer in England. And he is considered one of the first Pan-Africanists. He supported African journalists and advocated for self-governance in the Gold Coast. He communicated with W.E.B. Du Bois and attended Booker T. Washington's International Congress for the Negro in 1912. Mr. Castley Hayford is said to have written the first Pan-African novel in English, and was born in 1903 to 1959. And in novel in English, it was Ethiopian Unbound. I'm sorry. Now, the thing is that I argue with that point because Dr. Martin Delaney wrote a book called Blake and the Huts of Africa, and that was a Pan-African novel too, by Dr. Martin Delaney. So I have to go back and see what year that was, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't 1812 because he was 1912. But anyway, so that was Mr. Casely, ever, and this is his book, Ethiopian Unbound. And so he was a Pan Africanist. This is the first time I'd ever heard of him. And then there's George Padmore, and that's George Padmore. And so he's very interesting. George Padmore was born in 1903 to 1959, and he was born in Trinidad. Um, he was also known as Michael Ivan Meredith Nurse. And that was interesting to me because I have a student whose grandmother's surname is Nurse. He was a Pan-Africanist. He attended college at St. Mary's College, and he went to Fisk University. He also attended Howard University. He worked on African independence and eventually moved to Ghana to help Kwame Nkrumah develop the first African administration after colonialism. Then there was another guy. His name is, this is James Africanus Bill Horton. And he is also considered where the Pan-Africanism Genesis story begins. He was from Sierra Leone. He had Creole ancestry, as you can see. You know, he's a black man, but he's a very fair-skinned guy. He graduated the first with a degree in medicine in the first class of Fourabeg College in Freetown, which I visited and Burma attended. And then I went to London to study medicine. So he became a doctor. After getting his medical degree, he joined the British military. And while a student in England, he took the name Africanus. He said, "I'm an African. I'm proud of being an African," and he to celebrate his African heritage. Now, he also wrote several books, and all of these people were publishers. So it's like, okay. Well, he published books about the botany of West Africa because he was the first person to identify those plants and understand their medicinal practices. But he also wrote books which advocated for African independence and West African countries, peoples, 1868. And these books, did I write it? Yeah, I got one of them. So this is a copy of the book he wrote. And let's see. And so they argued against white supremacy and African inferiority as early as 1865. He is considered to be the first African to openly advocate for Africans to self-govern, creating the term African nationality. And he demanded that Africans have their own hospitals and schools and advocated for indigenous knowledge be included in the education. So he would have been the first person to come up with the idea of an African-centered curriculum. All right, okay. So, I mean, I'm gonna have to learn more about this guy. Now, I have talked about Martin Delaney several times, and he is known as the father of Black nationalism. Now, this is, and you know, we've seen him before. This man was a genius, and he was born. Let's see, he was born in Charleston, Virginia, in 1812. His father was enslaved, and his mother was free, and she taught them how to read and write. But what I wanted to do real fast and see is I'm a Blake and the Huts of America. Blake, and the Huts. Huts. Oh, no. Where is it? Huts of America. There it was. Blake and the Huts of America. All right. So this is his book. And this book was written in the 19th century. It was serialized in 1859. So, see, that's before Plagues in the Huts of America. I have this book. I read this book. This book is something else. So when you see this book, and you see that this was older, so then Mr. He was 1866. This was 1859. So he wasn't even born. Mr. Casey wasn't even born um when let's see Martin Delaney wrote this. Now Martin Delaney, I think maybe the difference was that Martin Delaney was, he was part of the North Star, and so he was publishing uh, pieces of his story in his newspaper, the North Star, that he operated on with Freddie Douglass. So maybe it was because it was later put in a compilation of these stories became a book, but he was writing this stuff. He serialized in the Anglo African magazine starting in 1859. So I'm trying to think, when was it finally published? I don't know. Doesn't say when was it finally published, but this is July 1859 is when he started writing that. So then we have, um, so we know that he was a Pan Africanist in the sense that he went to Canada, he visited Liberia, and he went to the Caribbean, he went to Cuba, and everywhere he went, he was not only um, an Pan Africanist as far as he was in the United States, but he was traveling to different islands and different countries where Africans were with this message. So he would, and this in the 1800s. I mean, this is before 1865. So he was the first Pan Africanist in the sense of mobilizing people in different places to rebel or to uh, become pro African. And he is considered to be the father of Black nationalism, right? So then the next person that I found out about was Edward Blyden. So I'm gonna go back to my pictures here. So now, but like I said, I knew about Edward Blyden. Come on, Mr. Blyden. Come on, Mr. Blyden. Okay, so this is Edward Wilmot Blyden, and you can see he was born in 1832. So these people are are younger, not much younger. He's only about, what, 20 years younger than Martin Delaney. But he lived, Edward Wilmot Blyden, he lived in St. Thomas. He was a Dutch colony in 1932. He was born free and he was educated in Venezuela. He immigrated to Liberia after being denied enrollment to American colleges, and I think one of them was Rutgers. He wanted to go there for theology, and they said no. But Blyden believed that the diaspora Africans should repatriate or immigrate back to Africa. And what is interesting is that during the Civil War, he stated that even if we were emancipated, even if they emancipated Africans, he said he did not believe that we would be protected. He believed that Europeans would do everything they could to re-enslave us, and we know that that's true. We won our freedom, and then you had the KKK rising up. We were forced back into Jim Crow. We lived under segregation for so many years. You have this civil rights movement, and then every time we've gained significant strides, we also have to face this crazy, unbelievable backlash. And so he stated a warning that even if Africans in the USA were emancipated, our only protection against future racial violence and descending backwards would be to create our own homeland with our own nationality. So that was his concern that and it's interesting because he's not wrong. We've made strides, but we are constantly having to battle with this demonic energy, this racism, this mental illness. I heard someone say that if we have epigenetics, if African Americans have epigenetics of trauma, then maybe white people are also having some epigenetics of racial violence. And like we saw this week with this young man, Nolan, I mean, that was so horrible. And we've had several incidents where African American men and women, young men and women, who have been found hung, hanging from trees. So, and we don't even want to talk about how many African American children we've had disappear. We don't know where they are. Um, some of them are autistic, and it's really sad to see that people are kidnapping our children like that. So, um, while we have made significant strides, we're also constantly battling this entity, this energy. And I think that we need to really begin to label if you are a racist. If racism means that you have a mental illness. Um, People who hate other people simply because of the color of their skin, because they're eating food that you don't like, because they're walking down the street and you just presume that they are violent and they haven't done anything to you. And you extend violence towards them. And then you say, well, that's because I was scared. And these people never did anything to you. There was no attack. There was no approach. They were just minding their business. That's a mental health issue. And I think more of us are beginning to say it is something in their DNA, epigenetic. Uh, Not everybody. I'm not saying that because I know some Africans. We have degrees of everything. We have our degrees of trauma. We have our degrees of injury, physically and mentally, that has been created by this system of racism in America. But Europeans have to. Those white boys that got on that train and went to um, DC, covering up their faces. If you are so proud to be a racist, just stand on business. But why don't you do it? Because you don't want people to know who you are, which means that you're not secure in it. You can only be that when you're hiding it. I'm right here in my African attire. I can wear it proudly no matter where I go, and people can feel how they want to about it. But I am not shielding my identity. Yes, I'm Black, but I'm also sending a message when I'm dressed in my African attire and in public, anywhere I go. I am not ashamed of my Blackness. And I can embrace and interact with anybody. I don't have any I don't threaten or feel like my role is to impose myself on anybody else, but I also don't feel like I should have to hide myself. And so this warning, like the ones issued by Frederick Douglass and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., are resounding in the midst of this current racist, sadistic administration that has unleashed violence against African Americans, against Hispanic people, against folks who are Muslim, against people who hate racism, whether they are white, whether they are Hispanic, whether they're Asian. Even Asians have been hurt, caused harm, and murdered in this space. Um, the last person I was going to talk about is David Walker, a North Carolinian abolitionist who stated something similar. He was born in 1796. We've also talked about him in Wilmington, North Carolina. And he wrote in his 1829 appeal to the colored citizens of the world uh, that Pan-African view that the only way to achieve freedom was the entire emancipation of our enslaved brethren all over the world. So he said that in 1829, which might be around the same time, that or it predates what let's see what Blake. I mean not Blake, but Mr. Dr. Martin Delaney, and so that's him. That's David Walker, 1785 to 1830. So, and then they found out that, after he made this appeal and published it, he was only about 30 something years old, and they decided to take him off the planet because he was like 30, 37 years old, something like that, when when he was when he was killed. Yeah, and so we have to understand these people are not. We don't want to say they're not committed. What we have is a group of people who are very comfortable with practicing racism. Some of them boldly, some of them hidden, and we just have to be mindful of what is going on. I pray for the family of Nolan, um, and all of these folks who have lost their children to these extreme violence, and we just have to be careful and wary and uh, uh, cautious and fearless too, though. Fearless. You have to walk fearlessly in this world. Let people know who you are, because they may be less likely to bother you if they know that you are proud of yourself and you are not intimidated by them. Um, so we give thanks for these black abolitionists, these black Pan Africanists who began this journey as early as the 1700s, and who have inspired us, and who inspired the first president, Kwame Nkrumah, um, to take that step of establishing an independent nation. And we pray that Africa will continue to build on that, become completely independent from Europe. Amen. Ashe. Alhamdulillah. Asante sana. Give thanks.
They were never supposed to win. In a system built to keep black families landless, one decision changed everything. Bitter Ground's Inheritance tells the true story of heirs who fought through Jim Crow, courts, challenges, and silence to claim land, wealth, and legacy. Told by descendant Captain Newborn, this is more than a story, it's a rare victory. A must-read that exposes America's hidden past. Get your copy today.
If you're watching this with your friends, you'll probably make a joke.
Because you know what you feel on the inside
isn't what you want people to know.
If you have to pretend to be happy,
find someone you trust and tell them.
If you get mad at things and you don't know why, or have thoughts about hurting yourself,
find someone you trust and tell them.
You are never alone when you share.
Seriously, people care about you.
It's okay to not understand what you're feeling.
And it's easy to think that you're all alone.
But you don't have to be.
You're never alone when you share.
Don't be ashamed to tell someone you trust what you're feeling.
You're not alone.
You are not alone.
Find someone you trust and tell them.
Tell a parent.
Tell a teacher. Tell a brother or sister.
Or just tell a friend.
You haven't done anything wrong.
Talk to someone.
Talk to someone.
It's how things get better.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I walk into the sound of drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I know my mom.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can play the drums.
I'm a St. Cia student. Of course I can work with my hands.
I'm a St. Cia student.